now the latest on July 26th around the wide world of tropics. Here's your tropical weather bulletin. Tropical Storm 7W has formed in the Western Pacific and ought to be a nameable storm right now. It's July 26th, the 36th storm to form in the world so far this year, on the right hand side of your screen. Elsewhere in the Atlantic, it's day 56 of hurricane season and no storms are active or expected to form in the next 5 days. In the Eastern Pacific, it's day 73 of hurricane season. No storms are active, but 2 areas of interest have a moderate chance of development in the deep tropics. In the Western Pacific, 7W is located just south of Japan and will strike the islands as a weak to moderate tropical storm. No systems are active in the Southern Hemisphere today. So, obviously 7W is our feature. It could get named at any time by the Japanese Meteorological Agency. The name will be Nari if it does happen. 40 mile an hour winds, pressure 997 millibars. It's 208 miles from Torishima in the Itsu Islands of Japan. 29.4 north, 137 degrees east. Over the next few days, we expect that it may pick up a little bit more intensity before making landfall somewhere in central Honshu over the weekend, before weakening and then possibly re-strengthening back to tropical storm status as it exits Japan into next week and eventually turning post-tropical. So that is pretty straightforward. The forecast won't change very much. Here's how the storm is actually looking. Compared to the wind shear graphics there, the green areas are places that are favourable wind shear zones. That means the storm can develop much more in those green zones. The red areas to the west there though, the storm could end up tracking into those marginal areas, which could be debilitating for its strengthening. In the North Atlantic though, this is how things are looking right now. The Gulf of Mexico, a few flare-ups there. There was that area of interest that had a low chance of development. It's been taken off the National Hurricane Center's website. There's a few low-latitude tropical waves down there in the Atlantic. 1 or 2 inklings from the models that later on next week perhaps we could see 1 or 2 of these start to get some momentum. In the Gulf of Mexico you can see how things are there blowing up over the Yucatan. DALILA is recognizable quite easily in the Eastern Pacific still. There it is, slowly meandering towards the west-northwest. A few weak systems we've had now in a row in the Eastern Pacific, when usually it's really warming up and spinning off a few strong ones. Of course, we did have Barbara, the main exception. The Central Pacific, not much going on there. The Western Pacific, of course, dominated by 7W. Elsewhere, not too much going on. A few flare-ups, though. The Western Pacific certainly starting to look a bit more active, and things could really get going in the next 2 weeks. If long-range models are anything to go by, we could start to see a few more storms, and it is expected at this time of year. In the Southern Hemisphere, the Australia and South Pacific region, a nice little flare up there near the Solomon Islands, although it's not expected to become anything, as is anything else in the Southern Hemisphere. The Indian Ocean really starting to go with that monsoonal pattern there now over India. Some very strong storms occurring over the central part of the country earlier today, but nothing of a tropical cyclonic nature. In the Eastern Pacific, sea surface temperatures getting really warm, 30 degrees plus, 28 plus in the deep tropics where those systems might form. The Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico, very warm, 30 degrees plus. Same too for the Western Atlantic, although slightly cooler than it has been in recent days, but the warm water's really starting to extend out east now over the Atlantic Ocean. The Arabian Sea, temperatures 30 degrees along the coast of Pakistan and India, on the other side of India too. The South China Sea and the Philippine Sea, very warm and ripe for the next tropical cyclone. Also underneath 7W there, conditions very good, sea surface temperature 28 degrees or higher. Despite that, it still doesn't really look like a bona fide tropical storm. It is, but the convection leaves quite a bit to be desired. Not much of it at all is blowing up near the center of the storm. A lot of convection really blowing up along the northern side. This could become a rain issue for parts of Japan later on. And these are the remnants of DALILA close up, really looking in a very sorry state now. Only has that remnant low-level circulation, wind speeds right down, and rainfall will be virtually non-existent. that concludes everything out there. The next name on the Atlantic naming list is Chantal. In the Eastern Pacific, the next name is Eric. In the Central Pacific, we're looking out for Akoni. Over in the Western Pacific, as I already detailed earlier, the next name on the list is Nari, followed by Wifa. In the North Indian Ocean, the next name on the list is Hika. You can find Force 13's outlets, the website force13.com with the latest. You can also find our YouTube page, search Force 13 all in text. If you're not there already, subscribe if you haven't so far. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter as well, search Force 13 all in text. And you can message us on any of these platforms. Get in touch, any questions, we'll get them answered for you. That's all for now. Another Tropical Weather Bulletin follows tomorrow. You can also help the project become even better by becoming a patron. You can see more information about all the benefits involved by visiting patreon.com/Force13. You can also contact me on Discord. It's Fool13 at extension 9094 and Force13 on Skype. You can also find our server link to our Discord server for Tropical Weather Chat in our description.